It's the eve of ruin. It's also 8:39 in the morning on this, the second day of May 2024. It is gloomy and foggy and dark and cold at Site B on this spring day. Appropriate time to continue our deep dive into the mystery of Vecna. As Eve of Ruin is still scheduled to be on the shelves of your friendly local game store as of next Tuesday, we're continuing to take a look at Scott McClintock's Doom Forgotten Realms under the precipice of What If Vecna won, and comparing what we think we're going to see from Eve of Ruin to Doom Forgotten Realms, and how I probably think it's probably going to be better than Eve of Ruin. But what is Vecna? You know, a question somebody asked yesterday is, if he's so powerful, how come he keeps losing his hand and eye? How come he can't get it back? And of course, that's deeply tied to the story of Vecna always trying to get the hand and eye back. The loss of the hand and the eye is the reason why Vecna lost power and was sort of missing for a while. And also, you know, of course, he kind of wants the hand and eye out there to corrupt people to become possible agents for him. You know, sure, he could get him back anytime he wants, really, because he's a god, but that sort of is like, the point is, it's part of the curse, it's part of the storyline, it's part of the betrayal of Kos. You know, he's constantly searching for them. He gets them back occasionally, but then he loses them again. But then he also sort of wants them out there to corrupt people to make powerful agents for himself. Vecna is a lich. So what is a lich? A lich comes to us probably quasi-mythical, quasi-historic. Historic-wise, it's an archaic English word meaning corpse. It's also archaic reverses to the gate at the lowest end of a cemetery, where the coffin and funerary procession usually entered was commonly referred to as the corpse gate or the Lich Gate. The gate was often covered by a small roof where part of the roof service could be carried out. Liches are sometimes depicted using a magical device called a phylactery to anchor their soul. And again, this has to do with the idea of preparing the body for transition to the grave, and items associated with the body that people associated with the individual that, you know, contains some of the essence of the individual. If we go into like the Hispanic Dias de la Muerte, then the phylactery would be things you leave out on Dias de la Muerte in the hopes that your loved ones would revisit you. So yeah, there we go. Now in Sword and Sorcery, it looks like the first time it sort of came up, it was in the writings of Clark Ashton Smith and Robert E. Howard, featured really powerful undead sorcerers, or later as we know them as Lich. And then, of course, Gygax bases his description on the short story by Gardner Fox, The Sword and the Sorcerer. That's archaic, undead wizard. H.P. Lovecraft used the word in The Thing of the Doorstop. Fritz Lieber used them in his Thieves stuff. Ambrose Bierce talked about undead wizards in The Death of Helbin Fraser. So the idea that a wizard at some point in time, especially a evil wizard, or just maybe not always, but just a wizard who feels like I can do more if I just had more time. So they pursue immortality, and often the way they pursue this immortality is through attaining lichdom and becoming a very powerful undead. And as they attain this, of course, the corruptive nature of being undead just gets them to the point where they become these evil, power-hungry whatever. But not always. I mean, more often than not, the liches are bad. But really, sometimes a lich could just be uncaring. It's just he's so separated from the physical world that he's not evil, he's not good. He's more interested in exploring, researching, furthering his quest for wizardly understanding of the universe, that they just become an alien being, you know, that they look upon normals as just, you don't really matter to me anymore. I'm doing things on such a much more higher level. But as the literature, and as especially as Dungeons and Dragons literature continued, they kind of got, you know, liches are bad. Undead liches, they're the ultimate form of bad guys. And then, you know, we get even higher and we get the big guys. We get Zastam, we got a Sarasek, and we get the original Vecna. Now, Vecna wasn't even a thing originally. Vecna was just, you know, an offhand reference. Hand and Eye of Vecna. Gygax had read this story, and he wanted to throw in these artifacts, and, you know, the idea that there was this mysterious entity out there that was so powerful that his hand and eye could do these things. But of course, in order to use them, you had to sacrifice part of yourself. If you wanted to use the hand of Vecna, you had to cut off your hand and replace it with the hand of Vecna. If you wanted to use the eye of Vecna, same thing. Which then, of course, leads us to the head of Vecna joke. Now, this is the head of Vecna meme has been floating around since 82, I think. Now, I'm pretty sure I met the guy, because I remember in early you know, when I first started gaming here in Site B in the 2000s, and hearing a story about a guy who did the head of Vecna, who fell for it, who cut his own head off and replaced it with the head of Vecna, hoping that he would gain the powers. So the story has been floating around for a while. But there was this guy, and he claimed it was him. And then a few years later, he tried it again. Another decapitated head, and it was the same guy. Now, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just somebody who took the story and made it their own. But the head of Vecna story. Now, what is Vecna, the Eve of Ruin? Well, if you've listened to this video right here, everything you need to know, you pretty much know the entire Eve of Ruin plot line, and you know what Vecna's up to, and you know the script, and you pretty much know that, hey, you're going to win, don't worry about it. Also, there's a thing between Vecna and Kass that we're still like, wait. Because if you're familiar with the Sword of Kass, Kass is the guy who caused him to lose the hand and eye originally. He was a commander of Vecna's. He betrayed Vecna. They got in a big fight. He's the one that cut off the hand and blinded Vecna and placed Vecna in the position where he was so powerless until Vecna lives, die, Vecna die. Now, whether this Eve of Ruin addresses Vecna lives, die, Vecna die or not, I don't know. It seems to just sort of start when you are playing these high-level characters. Vecna is doing a ritual. Your start is 10th level, so I guess you're either going to be playing characters that you had already who have reached 10th level, or making new 10th level characters, or there's going to be pre-generated 10th level characters in the book as examples. If I was them, I would assume that there's going to be at least 2 or 3 or rules of how to make a 10th level character if you don't have one. I would hoping that would be in there. And then you get to travel to some legendary locations, Ravenloft, Planescape, Spelljammer. How do you let the legendary Planescape or legendary Spelljammer? We're going to travel to Planescape. We're going to travel to Spelljammer. Okay, those aren't places. Ravenloft is a place. Eberron is a place. Dragonlance, Planescape, and Spelljammer are not a place. You go to visit Dragonlance. No, you go to visit the world of Krynn, where the Dragonlance novels took place. You go to visit. You don't visit Spelljammer. There's no place called Spelljammer, lady. Spelljammer is the campaign setting. Spelljammer is, you know, the infinite expanses of fantasy space. So where all these other worlds could be worlds in Spelljammer. Same with Planescape. You don't visit Planescape. You visit the city of Sigil, or you visit one or more of the planes. All Planescape is the idea of this multi-planar, multi-dimensional setting, all with this one city in the center and allowing characters to explore other planes, other realities. Same with, so those aren't campaign settings. You don't visit Dragonlance. And it's going to be how they're going to celebrate 50 years of D&D, even though they refuse to acknowledge anything before 2014. Vecna is the biggest of the baddest. Apparently he's bigger than a Sarasak again. I've always thought he was bigger than a Sarasak. And he's up to some shenanigans. That's going to be the accumulation of 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons. Except, of course, we don't acknowledge anything before 2014 in regards to Dungeons and Dragons history. And as far as we know, this is just kind of Vecna coming out of the blue with no attachment to Vecna Lives, Die, Vecna Die, or any of the other previous visits from Vecna. He comes out of nowhere and he's trying to take over the multiverse using the Rod of 7 Parts. You've got to beat him to the Rod of 7 Parts. You're playing 10th level characters. You'll make it up to 20th. Maybe, I don't know. And you've got to stop Vecna. But if you watch the video, you know pretty much the entire plot. You're summoned by these 3 powerful wizards, one representing good, one representing neutrality, and one representing evil. For some reasons, it's Mordekainen other than Elminster. I'm not sure why. Other than, I guess, they don't want Ed to be a part of it. And we know we know you win. We know that in the end, Vecna fails. Now, what they should have done with the What is Vecna is have it be a year-long story. Much the same way the Avatar trilogy or the War of the Immortals that Pathfinder's doing, or the multiple adventure paths that Paizo has done to explain transitions. You start it at one end and you end it when the player's handbook comes out, and the story in between would have been explaining the differences between 2014 D&D to 2024 D&D, and explaining the difference between 2014 D&D and all the previous editions of D&D, and it all would have been Vecna. And this year-long story of how Vecna is changing the multiverse, which explains the changes in 2024 D&D. That's what they should have done. But they didn't. So what is Vecna in regards to Vecna, the Eye of Ruin? Well, it's Vecna trying to get the Rod of 7 Parts together to probably control death again. Vecna being the original D&D Lich, the end-all, be-all of Lich, the most iconic bad guy. I don't care. People say Sarasak's the most iconic bad guy. But no, it's Vecna. Hand and Eye of Vecna. And they are acknowledging, it seems, Vecna's appearance in Critical Role. We know that in Critical Role, Joe Manganiello's Priest of Tiamat yanked the hand of Vecna to the surprise of everyone and claimed it as his own. Fucking in the Vox Machina's confrontation with Vecna, he did it in the name of Tiamat, took the power of the hand and it is his own, and that is now canon. It also apparently appears in Baldur's Gate. And the Rise of Avernus adventure, which takes place, I guess now canonically, it happened because that character appears in the Baldur's Gate Rise of Avernus adventure. That character appears and is acknowledged on the wiki. So he will have some say in the story, especially in regards to the hands, because it's now canon. So that's interesting to see how Joe Manganiello's character will affect this adventure, whether he has any say in it or not. Howdy, Dungeon Minister. Please, if you're listening, toss me that information so I can get in touch with you and arrange that interview. If you have the time, greatly appreciate it. So yes, that's where we leaves. Now, why am I doing all this? Why am I telling you all about Eve of Ruin? Because we're going to be going into Scott McClintock's Doomed Forgotten Realms. You have? I blame Vecna. So tomorrow and next week, I think I have all of the Doom Forgotten Realms adventures. Scott was very kind to send me them when I reviewed them the first time, because he knows I'm a huge fan of Vecna and I'm a huge fan of the Doom Forgotten Realms. And I had been talking about, after I'd ran Tomb of Annihilation, what is there is, because you never see the aftermath of Tomb of Annihilation. Wizards doesn't acknowledge the basically magical apocalypse that Tomb of Annihilation brought about. Liches losing their powers, people who had been reincarnated dying and not being able to come back. That's never really explained. And if you look at it, and if you really read through Tomb of Annihilation and you read through the Death Curse, it's pretty much the equivalent to the Snap from the MCU. The Forgotten Realms post Tomb of Annihilation should look a lot like Earth post the Snap, but it's never really explored. Scott explores it. He explores the idea of what happens after Tomb of Annihilation, how it was all connected to Vecna, how all these adventures, what would happen if the players didn't succeed? What would happen if the players weren't there to stop Tiamat? What would happen if the players weren't there to stop the princes of the elemental princes? What would happen if the players failed to stop Storm King's thunder? And finally, with and the Rime of the Frost Maiden, and how do the Black Obelisks all connect? Because that was, when the Black Obelisk first appeared in Phandelver, it was always hinted that Vecna, that had been floating around for 10 years, that the obelisks were appearing in every adventure, and somehow it was going to lead up to some grand reveal, which we thought was going to happen in Tomb of Annihilation, and then we thought again was going to have in Rime of the Frost Maiden, that we thought again was going to happen in the Return to Phandelver, was going to, end the 10-year story of the obelisks and start the story of Vecna and explain the transition. But that's not what they did. So tomorrow we will start our exploration of the Doom Forgotten Realms storyline, as created by Scott McClintock, and theory crafting the module that this should have been. And again, Dungeon Minister, please feel to just email me at thegmgrumpy@gmail.com. I don't know why your messages are vanishing. I'm going to blame Vecna. So till next time, have a great day. We'll be back in just a few moments with the crowdfunding news. And now more music. Oh, Vecna, you're so fine. You're so fine. You